I am doing my children's novel presentation on slavery. I think it is a key topic that we should be teaching our children in schools from ages first grade to sixth grade, as it is still going on in the world around them. With the topic of slavery, censorship is a key component to always keep in mind because of how gruesome some of these accounts are. It also needs to be discussed in a healthy way that creates a welcoming environment for children to freely express any discrimination they are facing in their own lives. The following 5 children's stories all share different individuals' own struggles with slavery. A school curriculum could be used from ages first grade to sixth grade in order to teach children and remind them each year about slavery and its existence in the world to this day. If we are able to teach them about slavery each year, it can evolve with the child's brain growth as well. As the brain continues to grow, it becomes so much more extrinsic rather than intrinsic as they are when they're at a young age. When they are at a young age, they only think of themselves, but by the time they reach sixth grade, they start thinking of the world around them. If we are able to equip them with the right tools along with these stories, we can teach them about slavery and teach them how other people have come through it, such as Frederick Douglass. I would like to use the working cotton, one runaway slave, escaping slavery on the Underground Railroad, to the story of the Negro, and then finally the narrative Frederick Douglass as a progressive series throughout a child's lifetime of school in order for them to evolve their brains and to evolve their senses and to evolve how they feel about the world around them. I think it is important to start with a novel such as Working Cotton, where it is about a young girl and progressing to an older man who was able to work his way through slavery and to finally flee from slavery. So let's get started. The first book I would like to start out with is Working Cotton by Shirley Ann Williams. Throughout this novel, she did a great job of getting to share the perspective of a child who is going through slavery. I think that is so unique because so many times we hear about the adults and what they were going through. And don't get me wrong, I think that is wonderful. But at the same time, we really do need to focus in on the children's perspective if we're teaching it to our children. It was an easy read for a first grader to be able to do. The only difficulty I found with this novel is that it was written with an accent of a little young African American girl who was living in this time period. So some of the words would be hard to understand if the child was just learning how to read. But if you go through this novel, you can see how beautiful all of the illustrations are. And it really just helps to show the reader what was going on and just really creating so many vivid images throughout the novel. It also helps the child to be able to put themselves into that story by having the scenario already painted for them. The next novel I would like to discuss is Runaway Slave, the story of Harriet Tubman. The novel is in a different format than most, as it was written by Anne McGovern. She really did a great job of creating these little blue images that you see throughout the story, of giving a little sketch, but not overdoing it, so that way the child also can use their own imagination. Therefore, I think it'd be great for second graders to read through, as they are really starting to discover the world around them and starting to have a mind of their own. This book was also great because it was able to tell this tale of Harriet Tubman in a very realistic form while it being a narrative form, but it also was able to share her struggles and her journeys even before she was, sold into slavery, as well as what it was like for her being the runaway slave, so to say. The subheadings I found were also very helpful in the story, and you can see them an instance right here where they just give a little snippet of what that chapter, so to say, is going to be about, so that way the reader can follow along very easily. The only weakness I found with the Harriet Tubman story was the information that was given throughout the whole book being more about her life rather than about slavery. I think that it would be great to be used, though, throughout a slavery unit in order to teach children the lives of these people. They aren't just slaves, they are real human beings, and so I think it still is a very valuable asset to have whenever discussing slavery to second graders. The next novel I'm going to talk about is Escaping Slavery on the Underground Railroad by R. Conrad Stein. This novel goes into a very detailed description of how pivotal the Underground Railroad really was. I think this would be a great novel for children starting out in 4th to 5th grade, as it is lengthy, but it is an easier read for them to follow along with, as it is a very detailed account. It would also be a great read for children to be able to experience a nonfiction novel that does have more depth to it than other novels, as well as providing historical account without having to come across as I would say datey, which means without having to give so many hard facts. It was able to describe an amazing part of American history while still enticing the reader and keeping their imagination going. One of the downsides I would find with this account is how it just jumped from character to character. I think it provided a little bit of inconsistencies without having closure to each and every individual, and so I think that would be something that some students would struggle with. Overall, though, I think it would be a wonderful book to describe the Underground Railroad as well as freedom from slavery to our young generation. The next book I would use if I were to be using a curriculum talking about slavery from ages 1st grade until 8th grade would be The Story of the Negro by Arna Bontemps. The story would be suitable for children starting in the 5th grade because it is a lengthy novel. It also goes in depth with bondage and the true struggles of Africans as they were crossing the Atlantic. I found it to be quite surprising to see the novel in the children's section, as it was giving many alarming accounts of what the slaves were experiencing. One of the strengths, though, was the first-hand accounts because it not only taught about the history of this time period, but also talked about the heritage of this particular group of people. We oftentimes get so caught up in what they were going throughout this time that we forget that these people started someplace else, and these people started in another country with their own traditions and their own culture, and they brought it with them, but then they had to get rid of it in order to fit into this norm of the society at this time. And I think this novel did a wonderful job at describing what that heritage is and how beautiful and how unique it was, and how I really wish that it wouldn't have been taken away because of the masters of this time period. Teachers would have to be careful when teaching this novel, though, because it does use the word Negro in the title, and it does use the word throughout the novel. I think it's really important for us to not skirt around the issue of this word because it is somewhat vulgar, as it does really show discrimination against a particular type of people. And I think we often are throwing this word around in our rap music and in our culture, thinking that it's okay to use this word as well as other forms of this word. But a teacher can really do a lot of good by showing individuals in their classrooms the value of people, as well as teaching them how horrible this word truly is. I think it's important for us to not only teach our children at home about vulgarity and how we should not be using these words to describe people and places and things, but instead also bring this into the classroom, even if it's not a Christian school. But I think this would be a great novel to read starting in the 5th grade, but I would recommend it for somebody who's in 6th or 7th grade instead because of the gruesome content of this book. The last novel that I read was The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. This book would be great for children who are ages 6th grade and even beyond, as it is a more complicated novel. The novel shows the story of a male slave who was passed from master to master. Over the course of the novel, the reader begins to see how different people in Frederick's life begin to help him become a better person through how they continue to pull for him in various situations. It also used vivid imagery while still allowing the reader to interpret it for their own imagination, which I think is a very valuable skill to have in a novel. The great things about this novel is how it shows Frederick escaping slavery and getting to have a happy and fulfilling life as a key component of the abolitionist movement. It does a great job at getting to explain their life after slavery, because in the beginning all of these novels have only been sharing slavery. They haven't been sharing life after slavery. So I think it's a great novel to be using with children as you're getting to the end of your curriculum, in order to show them that there is life after this, and getting to show them the end movement of slavery in order to show them how important it is that we came this far to get to where we are now. It was more challenging to read than the story of the Negro because it gives a complete perspective starting from the start of Frederick's life to the point of him freeing slavery, which I think is more comprehensive than most of the other novels as it explains such an incredible journey. I think this would be a wonderful novel to use for children starting in sixth grade as it gives them a very well rounded perspective of slavery. Overall, all five of these stories help the reader have a deeper understanding of slavery. I feel it is important for teachers to present this topic to their students while also still keeping in mind slavery and human trafficking that are still going on throughout the world to this day. I would also bring up fair trade to my middle schoolers, the children who are starting in fifth to sixth grade, as a lesson plan in order to teach them what people are doing in other countries in order for them to have the latest and greatest of everything they have. I think slavery is still a huge issue throughout the world, and we need to press it upon our children to do something about it and to live lives that aren't reliant upon slave labor. We also need to talk about all the different forms of slavery that are still existing in the world. Each of these novels will be great to incorporate throughout a child's development from first grade to eighth grade to not only remind them each year of how far America has come, but to also challenge them in their minds to think more extrinsically of the world around them each and every year.